Hello friends, welcome back to episode 6, pre-recorded and coming to you on New Year's Eve. Happy New Year!
Happy New Year's! We might all be getting ready to head out, or if you're just staying in, which is what I will absolutely be doing.
Absolutely, I'm not going to lie, I love me a quiet New Year's Eve.
I hate the chaos. I'm at home, in bed, hair washed and ready to go to bed.
Oh, absolutely. My great favourite New Year's Eve is a quiet thing with quiet people doing quiet stuff. But if that's not your thing, go you. I love that for you. Well, welcome back. This week we are talking about the new year, and quick as a flash, I started talking about something unrelated and I've forgotten the lovely intro that we were talked about, Uma.
The episode is titled The Quiet Between Years.
Yes, it
Reflecting,
is.
resetting and reimagining.
It is indeed. So obviously New Year's Eve themed, and just a little bit of a touch on how that can be for many of us, well, what the expectations are and what we can be.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of fear and uncertainty that comes around with New Year's Eve, and you have probably bombarded with all these capitalistic ventures of get a planner, get this, get that, get this, and you'll fix your life. And I think something else that happens is you have two types of people. One that's like, where has the year gone by? And that's very much me. But also just someone that's also sort of like, I haven't accomplished anything this year.
And I actually would say that for me, it's both of those things. And the former was my ADHD going, where did the year go? And the latter was my autism going, how did we waste it? But I think I really love it that you were just, commenting on the kind of expectations of the coming year, and we do have these questionable things forced on us. You need to change your life, do more, be better than you were. But actually, you were better before. You were great. And for a lot of us with autistic characteristics, the new year can actually be a lot of change and a lot of changed expectation. And we can also just be kind to ourselves and recognize that we've worked really hard for the last year. And I like the process of going, is there something I can change that suits me, rather than, I'm going to go to the gym and get this body that Vogue tells me I need to have, or I'm going to go and do this course and learn this thing that makes me look smarter to other people. You know what? Tap into your gorgeous autism and learn the thing that you love.
Yeah, I think that's really what we could call a non-traditional win, right?
Absolutely.
When people are always like, what are your New Year's Eve resolutions? And it'll be like, I need to get to bed early. I need to be more physically active. I need to go to the gym 10 times a week or whatever. I need to drink more water. And those are great goals to
Absolutely.
have. And they're really good to sort of pour that energy into your body and everything. But sometimes, there's non-traditional stuff as well, like what you mentioned, Aaron, reframing things for what works for you.
Very much so. And I think just with that expectation that can be laid on top of the world at New Year's, and just tapping into, sometimes we just are overwhelmed at the end of the year, and trying to commit to going to the gym is setting ourselves up for failure. Trying to commit to making some change. I'll walk to work one day a week, or I'll walk to the shops instead of taking the car. That can be, somebody who regularly exercises might be going to the gym 5 days a week next year. My version can be what works for me and what helps me achieve my aims.
I think internal growth is something else that we can touch on.
Absolutely. I really like that you brought that one up, because I think internal growth is so different to everybody because we all see the world differently. But for me, part of internal growth is really questioning the things that I believe about myself, about the world, about the universe. But in the world of neurodivergent folks and autistic ADHD particularly, we learn a lot that's not actually helpful to us. We learn, that whole, I'm too rigid over here because of my autistic characteristics, and I'm too chaotic over here because of my ADHD characteristics, and, oh, you're chaotic, so you can't be autistic, and, oh, you're really rigid, you can't be ADHD. And so I kind of learn things about myself that might not be true and might not be serving me. So I like this time of year to reflect on, what was I thinking that wasn't helpful last year? And can I make some change to make that more helpful? And that's not for everybody, but that's what works for me. And I think if we look hard enough, we can also, what worked really well? What was I doing that was great? And just honouring that and going, new year, I'm going to do more of that.
Yeah. do more of the things that just make you feel good.
Absolutely.
And I think that we tend to spend so much time thinking about things that make us feel bad. There's also a lot of things that make you feel good, and
Absolutely.
inadvertently they just go hand in hand together.
And ironically, often we're thinking about the things that make us feel bad because we think we're negatively impacting others or doing the wrong thing. But thinking about the things that we've done well can make us feel good and have a positive influence on others. And if the things that make us feel good don't harm others, let's pay attention to those too.
Of course. And I think another thing that I'd like to touch on is quiet progress, because there could be something that you might have like realized that you wouldn't have been even doing this year, but it's like something that you've maybe internally made a bit more of an effort to think, and there has been progress in that particular area. Like for me, I would say maybe just without even realizing, I've sort of habit stacked my morning routine, and I feel like
love me some habit stacking.
it's so good because I realized that I need breakfast to function. So once I realized that means that I need to be up a bit earlier, so I set alarms earlier than I have to be up. That's just great for me. That's what's worked, and now I don't leave the house like without my breakfast, and I feel like that's great, and that's been a progress. That's something that's built over the year.
Brilliant. I've got a similar one too. I'm not a huge meat eater. It's not like a huge priority of mine, but I'm not vegetarian. But I noticed that I wasn't eating enough meat and was probably an iron issue, but having some things and just remembering to eat meat a few more times each month. You know, I'm really happy that little quiet win has had such a difference to my energy levels. Just that little change to diet. I haven't put myself on a specific high nutrient diet. I've made a little change that's had a big impact.
Yeah, and I think another thing that I would like to add, just like a little shout out to myself.
No, I'm here for it. You deserve a shout out.
I started the year with like severe vitamin D deficiency. Like my doctor was like, we have to get you on a supplement. So we started off with just the daily ones, and I was like, these are a nightmare. I don't remember to take them daily. She was like, all right, let's try the weekly ones. And I think I've kept up with the weekly ones. I think maybe I've missed like 3 weeks since we started, which has probably been like in September. But that's also progress.
Brilliant. I love that. Well, my version of that is, I said I'd forgotten to buy my Vyvanse for a week on end with it being really obvious, but I got to buy it on my way here today, so I medicated and semi-functional, my version of functional, which I love.
Amazing. That's just those little things in the day that you just miss because
so.
you just, you're going around the craziness of everything. Now let's talk a little bit about resolution and goals that respect neurodivergent brains.
Very much
because we are probably flooded with all these videos that are coming in right now, influencers telling you how you need to reshuffle, or the vision boards are a big one. Vision boards, they are helpful, not of course, but how do we sort of add this neurodivergent lens to things?
I think don't get too caught up in New Year's resolutions. I actually love the idea of long-term change. If I want to make a change, it's not I'm changing this thing and a big change now. It's I'm going to change it a little bit at a time. So my New Year's resolution is always not I'm going to go to the gym 5 times a week. It's I'm going to go to the gym more this year than I did last year. That's a lie. That is never my goal. Look at this body. But for other people, that would be the version of what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
For me, in a realistic context, because my ADHD loves to do the things, it's I will take time off. And, sometimes it's a couple of hours each week. Sometimes I take a whole day off each week. And that's growth for me. That's change. And it's not just a quick change that I can't sustain. It's a slow burn change that I've been incrementally doing, and it's actually more helpful for me than my ADHD starting to do the thing that my autism sets up, and then my ADHD going, bored, and not following through. And then I'm like, I'm so bad at changing the way I live. Actually, that's just not the way for me. And it's not the way for many of us who are neurodivergent.
Yeah. I think potentially what kind of goals thinking about goals that also feel energizing instead of stressful would be a way to reframe things. So if it's more movement, potentially thinking about that in a way that's energizing and not that stressful. Do you have any tips for that?
So, how much detail to give? So there's a conversation I have in a therapeutic context about emotions and how anxiety and excitement, what our body is doing, and our mind to some degree is very, very similar. I get excited, if I get anxious, the physical tension is quite similar. What happens in my stomach is quite similar. My heart rate increases a little bit. My breathing increases to get the blood flowing around my oxygen to my brain. And so if I'm trying to set something that seems challenging, if I'm trying to set a goal that seems challenging and hard to motivate for, it's normally something for those ADHDers out there, we have a lot of failure experiences with sticking to things. So the procrastination is often, I'm going to fail at this, is an underpinning anxiety. But what I tend to try and do is clock that, because we can't lie to our brains, and go, yep, there's a risk that I'm going to ADHD all over this. But also, any change is better than no change. You know? And if I go walking once a week, that's better than nonce a week. That's not a word.
Yeah,
pretend. But then I look at the thing, whatever the thing is, and try to find the exciting part of it. And sometimes it's not, it's not a New Year's Eve excitement for and things. It's just I don't feel guilty, and I can shift my anxiety from to more of an excitement, or less of a barrier, more of an engaging, motivated experience towards the thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess another thing that we could think about is, I think, a theme for the year, which is very similar to what you're saying in the sense of trying to break these things up into less of like, okay, I need to get 5 walks done this week.
Yeah.
And looking at it as more of like, I'm doing more walks this year, and that's about it.
Yeah.
And I think rather than goals, themes and overarching like...
Very much so. And again, autism, ADHD. Autism loves the detail. So sometimes having that, it depends on our characteristics, but sometimes having that set number is what I need. But sometimes being a bit freer and being more general, I'm going to exercise half of the week. That gives me ADHD freedom if I have something come up on Tuesdays, but it also gives me a set boundary if I'm leaning into that autism characteristic of details orientation and following the rules.
Yeah.
But I think also we can, and I wonder if you've kind of had this experience, we can just tap into our characteristics for better or worse, because they're not inherently wins or losses. And I can lean into my ADHD when I'm a little bit novelty seeking and know that my autism is probably tracking that and can bring me back on track later on. Or another thing that I love is if I know that I get bored of routines with my ADHD, I have a backup routine ready to go, and then I get that novelty and the routine. I wonder if, Uma, you do anything sort of like that, any strategies that you have to help you achieve the things you want without the stress?
I think I definitely get bored of using just one tactic to keep me on task.
Yeah.
So I often switch between like a journal and my phone.
I love this.
Or even like sort of like, if let's say I'm really in a procrastinating state of mind, I will text a friend and be like, hey, I need you to check in on me tonight that I've done this, because I'm afraid of getting this done.
Yeah.
And that's always been really helpful for me, and breaking it down into little things, that's something that really works.
And do you know what? If anyone out there has done CBT for ADHD, Uma's just tapped into a lot of beautiful parts of that. One of them is, if you're having trouble getting started, the first step is too big. But most ADHDers out there, I think, will be able to clock this. And what you just said, Uma, and that's, some people call it body doubling, some of us call it social accountability. It's, I don't need an exam or the deadline for my assignment. Sometimes it can be my friend knowing that I was working on that to be the accountability that I need to pay attention and motivate. And that can be, the thing, saying to my partner, I'm going to exercise half of the days each week can help keep me on track. And that's a lovely ADHD strategy.
Yeah, absolutely. I think keeping people like appraised and also keeping yourself accountable just goes hand in hand, And I think with the right support system, I have really great friends that just check in without being accusatory. So they come in, they're like, hey, how'd you go with that? Do you need some help? Like, what's going on? Like, oh, that seems pretty important. Like, you wanted to get this job application done. That's really important. Like, did you get it done? How's that going? I think that's also important to remind ourselves, because we all have different upbringings.
Absolutely.
I definitely have a friend that sort of messaged me being like, hey, have you done it? Like, why haven't you done it yet? And that's just a testament to their upbringing, not wrong or, but that's just who they are. And I think that's really interesting to think about setting the intention of, the year.
Yeah.
But also reminding yourself that, I was chatting with Aaron about this as well, New Year's is such an arbitrary concept because in different cultures, like New Year's dates will be different. So like, for example, in Indian cultures, you'd have like a New Year's for each culture, and that comes much later in the year. And that's technically our calendar. And if you think about even with the Chinese culture, you've got the Chinese New Year that's a bit, you know, further down in the year. So it's ultimately still just a day.
Yeah.
And for you to put so much emphasis on your life being flipped in 24 hours is actually insane.
Exactly. And I love the idea of, you know, we were talking about the different New Years, and we could also, ADHD would enjoy this, I think, we could also have a new year for everyone's New Year's and reset not just our expectations about my exercise, my diet, my social interactions, but reset my expectations for myself and how I'm viewing myself.
Yeah.
Did I make some change? Yeah, I did a good job.
Yeah.
You know?
I think another thing that I think was really helpful, I have a few people that I follow on social media that have given tips sort of that they check in with themselves quarterly rather than waiting for the year to pass. Because that can be very, I think it's really, I don't know if the word is inhuman, but it's difficult for human beings to think about, okay, I'm going to process 24, you know, days or like 12 months of a year in one day. Like that's insane. So I think this person was suggesting that you set quarterly goals and think about it as thematic as well. So if like January to March is probably you've just started a new job, how can I make sure that my goals align more with that? And that's definitely something I've done.
I love that. And for all the managers out there or people that work in organizations that have this style of management, I think what you're talking about there is a little bit like the whole KPI process without the stress of it. But just sort of checking in with myself, how am I going with this goal that I had? If I was to like point to any goal for a lot of our community, it would just be that goal of my relationship with myself and improving that. Every other goal hinges off my relationship with me. How much do I love and respect me and honor me? And if I can improve that year on year, everything else can follow. You
know? Yeah. And I think that's just a great way to sort of like, I guess for ADHD individuals, it's like going into both of it, because your ADHD will like the novelty of things and your autism will like the structure. So
absolutely.
It's great.
And that's that, you know, we were talking about the confounds a while back, and that's the thing that some people will go, oh, you're so novelty seeking, can't be that. Oh, you're so rigid, can't be that. But actually we can be both in different settings. And sometimes setting those standards and unrealistic expectations for ourselves with New Year's Eve can set us up to beat ourselves up and have not a great relationships with ourselves later on. I love that you said about quarterly check-ins. I tend to do it weekly. So we as psychologists in Australia, I think you would have covered it at least a little, we are trained to engage in reflective practice. And that's once a week, every Friday, 6 to 7 p.m, I check in with myself for an hour. What did I do well this week in a clinical sense? And what could I improve on from what I did this week? You know, if Uma and I were having a chat and I saw Uma's sort of do this, I'll reflect on that and think, oh, was there something that I did there that I could have done differently to make that thing go better? Or if I had a conversation and somebody I was chatting to had a real aha moment, incidentally, that's why I'm a psychologist. It's the pleasure of that. I'm like, okay, what did I do there and how can I do that more with other people? And I think that's that quarterly check-in that you're talking about. For me, I do it for my work and I do it for my life a little less regularly, but it just keeps me on track and allows me to goal set.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's great. And I think it doesn't even have to be quarterly. It can be weekly like yourself. Like everyone has their own timing.
Absolutely.
And it's also just realizing that I think for me, I try to remind myself how like privileged I am in the sense that I'm able to live this year. And that in itself is already such an accomplishment. You don't need to go and find other things.
No.
If you've made it to this date,
absolutely.
accomplishment in itself.
And that's just a lovely comment I was thinking about in one of the past episodes we were recording or after. And that's just a lot of what I say comes from the position of privilege that I occupy in the world. You know, I live in this body and not everybody has my experience. And I don't want to invalidate other people's experience because they're equally valid and joyful and beautiful and difficult. So, but the reflective practice or the self-check-in, it can just be so helpful.
Absolutely. Just a sort of tangent.
Yeah,
we love a good tangent.
Love a tangent.
Let's touch a little bit about what sort of obstacles pop up when you're trying to follow through on plans and resolutions. And I think we have already talked a bit about that, managing that. But let's just, for the sake of viewers and someone that maybe is tuning in and not of the ADHD community, what kind of things pop up when?
Well, I think, and especially for, I guess, a lot of CBT therapists particularly, this is probably something that taps into a difficulty that lots of neurodivergent people with ADHD characteristics have, which includes AuDHDers. And that is, and you touched on it too, that novelty seeking, which can make it difficult to follow through on a plan, or that distractibility that can, or the impulsivity to do something else. And, I've worked with people, and I've spoken to people who've worked with people where somebody has gone into therapy with CBT that's been delivered to a different brain style, and they've felt guilty. They felt as though they'd been made to feel guilty about not completing the CBT homework. And I think honouring that everyone's brain works differently, and my brain might not be great at CBT homework, and if that's the case, it might also not be really good at rigid set routines.
Yeah.
And so just having more leeway towards my brain works this way, but your brain might not, and their brain might not, and what's the best way as a clinician for me to work with you, but for ourselves to me to set expectations, set goals for myself, and achieve them in the way that I want to.
Yeah, absolutely.
How do you manage that?
I think for me, I've actually forgotten the question that I've asked you.
Oh, we were talking about this will never happen again, by the way, Uma forgetting and me being able to answer. We were talking about that setting of goals and the novelty seeking, setting routines and sticking to them.
Yeah, I think the sort of challenges that I face is definitely in relation to also the emotional side of things. I think I will get very frustrated if I'm not achieving it. If it's, let's say, like something like a health issue pops up, like I fall sick for a week, so I can't go to the gym. That will throw me off a lot more than I realize.
Yeah.
And I think giving myself that grace and finding that like middle ground of, okay, like I was going maybe 5 times a week, so I can't expect myself to go 5 times a week after I've recovered from a month-long cold, perhaps.
Yeah.
So I think it's just about rationalizing these things, and sort of like, I think it really helps because I depend on like the people close to me, and I tell them like, this is what's bothering me, and they'll be like, valid.
Yeah.
But you are also doing this and you're also doing this, and I think that's a thing that we sort of forget in the world that we live in, because it's very like, what's next? What's next?
Well, I think too, and I love the example that you gave as well, like, when we're sick, we can't plan for everything. And, my autistic characteristics love to know what's coming. And so if I set a plan and then don't meet it, I can really also kind of beat myself up a little bit. Excuse me. But one thing that I do with some of the people that I chat to is plan for breaking the plan, because then I'm setting, my goal setting includes, well, if I'm sick or if something else comes up, then in that situation, I don't expect myself to do the change every week of the year. Instead of like, I'm going to exercise more each week than I did last year, and then I include a caveat, okay, I'm going to do that as many weeks as I can, and that gives me personally, and some of the people I work with, different for everybody, that leeway to then not like self-flagellate. I love that word. When I am sick and don't get I won't say how many hours of work done I'd like to get done every day, but don't get all of my work done.
Yeah, that's so fair. I think just to end off on maybe talking about like the emotional impacts of goals, and your earring has actually just fallen off. I don't know what maybe that was the...
Promised myself I wouldn't cry.
No.
Again. About the emotional impact of goals. Well, I think there's 2 options there. When we achieve our goals, there's mastery, and that's such a positive thing, and that can motivate us more, and that can, going into similar goals or even unrelated goals, we're like, I had this win and now I've got the energy for another win. But the flip side is that we can have the reverse if we set a goal and then maybe have some social accountability, some body doubling, tell my friend I've set this goal, and then we don't meet it and we feel like a failure and we feel like we've failed my friend.
Yeah.
So there can be that negative emotional aspect. And I think giving ourselves that grace, that leeway, okay, I'm going to do this to the best of my ability as often as I can, because our energy levels go up and down, our stress, our sickness, our health goes up and down, our tolerances go up and down. And just knowing that there is no straight line in the universe outside of abstract maths. And And if that's the case, then some days I'm going to be able to meet all of my goals, and some days I'm going to be able to meet none of my goals. And that's the beauty of being a human. Oh,
Yeah.
hello, Alicia Lansdowne in the Human Being podcast. That is
Shout
the
out
beauty
to
of
Alicia.
Yeah. It's the beauty of being human is we're imperfect, but that's not, I feel like such a broken record. That's not a bad thing. And kintsugi pottery, broken pottery, like healed back together and beautiful with gold or silver glue is such a great example of that. And when we can see ourselves through that lens, we can have a better emotional experience about the goals that we set, meet, and maybe don't quite meet.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's just about being graceful and kind to yourself, you know, navigating the holidays and then navigating so many emotion-rich things. And it's interesting because we think about like this time of year as the holidays, but you're not really getting a bit of a break, are you?
No, quite often we're not.
Quite a conundrum there. But I think that's about all we have for today, Aaron, if you want to just conclude the episode.
Absolutely. And again, thank you so much for joining us. I think I've said it before and I'll say it again because we love some free marketing. Like, follow and subscribe if you will. We love your company. We love your comments. We love your feedback. And Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Bye, team. Squeezy, squeeze.